everyone. I'm Aja Dorsey Jackson, author, editor, and ghostwriter, sharing information you need to help you along your publishing journey. One question aspiring authors ask often is whether self-publishing or traditional publishing is better. A lot of people expect that because I help people self-publish that I would say self-publishing, but I actually believe there is no better or worse overall when it comes to publishing. It just depends on who you are and your goals when it comes to publishing your book. Asking which is better to me is like asking, is it better to be self-employed or is it better to work for a company? There is no better. What's better is going to rest with what's better for you and your publishing goals. I really can't answer the question for you. It's something you'll have to gain information on and answer for yourself. I do have a post on my website at ajadorseyjackson.com about author profiles. Check it out, determine which you fall into to help give you some guidance on what might be right for you in terms of the publishing route you take. Now, what I plan to do in this video is give you some pros and cons to each to help guide you in ultimately making your decision. Before I do that, let me just give you some brief definitions in case you're completely new to this on what these terms even mean. So what is the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing? I got this great definition for traditional book publishing from Writer's Digest. So traditional book publishing is when a publisher offers the author a contract and in turn prints, publishes, and sells your book through booksellers and other retailers. The publisher essentially buys the right to publish your book and pays you royalties from the sales. Now, this requires you to essentially sell your book to a publisher, usually through an agent. But traditional publishing is called this because it was basically the model for publishing your book for a very long time. You've always had a handful of self-publishers, but traditional definitely dominated the publishing world for many, many decades. Now, self-publishing, which you also sometimes hear referred to as independent or indie publishing, is publishing your book without the use of a publishing house. So this model began to gain some steam in the 90s, and then with the introduction of the Kindle in the mid-2000s, it's grown to become $1 billion industry. There are pros and cons to each. With traditional publishing, I'll start with traditional. One of the biggest pros is prestige. So with the big five, I think now something just got bought out and it's like big four traditional publishers. They still bring a certain level of prestige if that's what you're looking for. If you want that New York Times bestseller title, it's easier. It's still not easy, but easier to get there going the traditional publishing route. Resources. Working with a traditional publisher really is like the difference between working for a company and working for yourself. The publisher provides the publishing resources to varying degrees. The publisher typically pays for and manages the hiring for editing, listing, getting books into stores, to some degree marketing, but more of the onus of that is going on to authors in the past. But overall, you benefit from their team and their money. Risk. The publisher is taking the financial risk. If the book doesn't do well, the publisher takes the fall for poor sales, not you. You have less upfront costs. You have a lot less to lose financially. Now, some cons of traditional publishing. One of the biggest ones is just getting signed. You have to rely on a publisher to sign you. You need to pitch your book. You usually need to work with an agent, and this can be a time-consuming process or something that just never happens. It's not necessarily due to the quality of your book, just what the publisher believes will sell. They also have a lot more people who need to make money off of your project. So taking a chance on a book that potentially isn't going to sell enough to pay all those people isn't worth it. Timing. You have to be on their timeline. You might want your book to be out 2 months from now, but the publisher's schedule might put you at the middle of next year or 2 years from now. Especially if you're a speaker or entrepreneur and trying to time your book publishing with your events and goals, you might not have the flexibility to work around the publisher's timeline. Control. You don't have as much creative control through the traditional publishing process. The publisher has control over certain aspects of your book project in terms of editing, design, etc. So if you want to maintain a certain level of control and you're a control freak like me, it might be hard to hand that over. And finally, royalties. Royalties tend to be less with traditional publishers. Again, they have more people to pay, so your percentage in royalties with traditional publishers is often less. Traditional publishing royalties range from about 10% on the low end to 25% really on the highest end, whereas self-publishing through Amazon, your royalties are 70%. Now that number is a little deceptive. I'll talk about that in a later video. But even if you're printing and selling your books yourself, you really don't have royalties, just whatever you set minus the production costs. So in short, you're earning less on each book with traditional publishing. So now I'll talk about some self-publishing pros. With self-publishing, you have all the creative control. The direction of your project is entirely up to you. You don't have to edit it or tailor it to someone else's idea of what will sell. The choices about your final project are all yours. Timing. You determine when and if you publish. You don't have to wait for someone else's approval. You can publish on the timeline that works for you. Royalties. Your royalties are higher and you set your pricing. You can charge what you feel like your book is worth and make a higher percent of the profit on each book with self-publishing. Now, some of the cons of self-publishing. One big one, you have all the control, but you also have all of the risk. All of the upfront costs are yours, so you take the hit if you don't make your money back or lose money on your project. You have the responsibility of managing every aspect of your publishing, from marketing to formatting to editing. Even if you hire someone else to do it, you still have all the responsibility of assembling your team. Now, both of those are much harder than they sound. It's really like owning your own business or starting another business. If you're already a business owner, you already know that that is not easy. I hope through this I've given you some useful information as you decide ultimately which route you want to pursue. In closing, I'll say it's not an either-or proposition. There are people who do both. There are hybrid authors who self-publish some books and traditionally publish others. The good thing is that the choice is really yours. If you want a quick resource that breaks down the cost and timeline that you need when self-publishing, visit my website at AsiaDorseyJackson.com and download your free self-publisher's budget and timeline quick guide. Now, don't forget to like and share and comment with any thoughts or questions, and I'll see you next time.